Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we are taking a look at Like Dreamer on Nintendo Switch. This is by the same dev that did Cosmo Dreamer, which came out sometime last year. I don't recall what month it was, but that game is certainly a blast, really solid, and from the bit that I've sampled of Like Dreamer today, this functions very, very similarly, and it feels just as awesome. So I'm really eager to just share a little bit about how it works and jump into a few levels with you all. So you have 3 characters to choose from, and of course you can adjust like shot type, missile type, bomb type, and style. So there's a lot of room for customization, which is always fun. I haven't played with any of the other characters. I just really enjoy just the straight firing kind of approach with like, well, relatively straight anyway, like the front form and the focus form and whatnot for the missiles and the bombs and whatnot, like stinging words and shield enhance and all these things. So that's just what I've been dabbling with. Instead of doing just the first like 4 stages, what I did here, I think I did stages 1, 2, and then 5 and 7. I felt like kind of just switching things up again, because I'm sure like if I did the first 4, you can kind of just get an idea for like how the difficulty progresses, but I wanted to show just a little more variety, so that's kind of what we're doing here. But right away you can see like really, really nice, soft and pleasant colors in the background, and the enemies are just doing what they do. Everything is super discernible, which is always nice. Despite how basic the enemy art is, I really enjoy it, and it just works with the entire look and feel, like the whole package of this game. Everything fits really nicely. So we can get into a bit of the mechanics. The hearts you're collecting, those are called likes, just like on social media. When you collect those, the buzz meter increases at the bottom right side, and when that is full, I think somewhere in the options you can adjust, or maybe it's on the character screen or something. I think we just passed it like before entering the stage. You can choose auto fever or not, but I think the way it works is when that's full, you kind of shift into this mode of like superpower, where you're just doing more damage and other things. You can check out the manual, because there are a bunch of specifics that they do touch on. Now when you're grazing and stuff like that, and maybe other times too, like I've only played a little bit of this so far today, you get more followers, like the little blue +1, the icons you see popping up by the bear's head right now, like +3, da 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 da. Those are your followers. And you can definitely get a whole bunch coming off your character when you're grazing too, and those contribute to something as well. I forget what it was, but yeah, anyway. And then you have your shield. I'm pretty sure mine's fully charged right now. It's kind of tricky to tell. I see the things like the gray text spinning around, so I'm assuming it's full. But if I take a hit, I think I lose the shield. There may be some differences depending on what your loadout is. I haven't looked too deeply into that yet, but I know that's how the other game worked, Cosmo Dreamer, where you had the option, depending on what you selected, you could make it so that when you took a hit, you only lost like 1, I think, mental level. So anyway, you can use your mental level stars as like bombs, so you can use those whenever you want. I don't recall what builds up the mental level. I know in the first one it was like collecting the bubbles, and of course if you're point blanking, you're getting way more. And maybe it's the likes, maybe they also contribute to that too. I would need to double check the manual for this, but yeah, really fun stuff though. On my first attempt, I think I made it. Well, actually no, I stopped early because I was like part way. Like I can obviously jump into where I left off just by selecting the stage, but yeah, I think I made it all the way to the 8th level, Yeah, I think that was what we saw at the very start of the recording here. So yeah, I'm eager to see how many stages this is. It won't surprise me if it's more or less designed the same way Cosmo Dreamer was. But yeah, it's really cool that this is finally here. Yeah, like I said, everything feels great. Now, for the sake of convenience, I was playing with the Pro Controller just for this session, because that's just what I had right here. And one thing I have noticed, like I use the D-pad, I never use the stick on the Pro Controller anymore. And one thing I do notice is that even when you're in your focus shot slower speed, because you're like holding down that button, the movement feels really, really slippery with the D-pad. And I can only imagine how wild it would feel if I was actually using the stick on the Pro Controller. So that's something to be aware of, or at least that's how I feel about it. So I'm very interested in seeing just how it feels when I'm using stick. But yeah, really engaging gameplay. One thing that I'm not so crazy about when it comes to these games is how, even though like the projectiles are discernible, like you can always see what's what and what's coming at you and the trajectories and whatnot, the way in which they do the hitboxes in both this game and Cosmo Dreamer is kind of like wonky to me, because it's almost as though like sometimes you can kind of just blindly mad dash through a pattern and you'll come out just fine, because like, okay, you just didn't, there was no collision detection there. And other times it's the opposite, where like you will attempt to do that and you'll just take a hit. And there's really, I think it's just, yeah, it's really bizarre to me, because like, yeah, maybe things could be a little more, like if I was playing with an even much slower movement speed, then I might start, yeah, just calculating things a little more precisely. But for the most part, it's kind of like, well, what is the hitbox, and what can I get away with? What can I not get away with? Right off the bat, like, and just like, yeah, Cosmo Dreamer, sometimes it happens where you just take a hit, and other times like you don't, and it kind of just feels a little too up in the air for my liking, because I like to be able to apply precision to, yeah, my gameplay. But there are certain games like these two that kind of just feel like things are a little too, I'm not sure the word to use, like it's just not super clear. Because there are plenty of situations where you can risk being very, very close, or even just squeezing in between things. But then, yeah, like I said, other times that won't be the case. So it's like, well, okay, where's the consistency? Where's the, like, what can you do to start building that awareness so that you can actually trust and know for sure, like, okay, I'm going to survive when I go through here, as opposed to not. Like, it's just kind of tricky. So stage 5 is definitely what we jump into. I really enjoy this dark stage. It's cool. And just like the other game too, like every stage is very different with just the enemy types and what it throws at you. And for those who haven't heard, which, unless you're like on Twitter following me, you wouldn't have heard this, but I cleared Rolling Gunner on Expert Mode yesterday, so that clear will be up on the weekend with commentary. And it's funny because I was thinking to myself, like, I know Like Dreamer is coming out, but in ways I don't even want to play anything else until I at least get that first clear. And so the fact that I cleared it the night before this came out was great. But the journey is just beginning. That is for sure. But yeah, I'll get into all those details in that video. Because right now we're talking about Like a Dreamer. So I'm really interested in seeing what we get next from this developer. I haven't looked into if they have other games and we just don't have Switch versions yet, or what the situation is, or maybe they only have these first two. But yeah, these ones are always kind of like, I don't see either of these as something that I will really click with to the point that I'm like going all in, attempting to do all these wild things and putting a lot of time and energy into it. For me, these games are kind of more or less just get like a maniac mode clear, enjoy it, and then just more or less let it be a bit of a light diversion, or just kind of like a transitional game. But it's still fantastic sharing stuff like this, because it is really, really well done. Like, everything just flows nicely enough. Even with the things that I mentioned, like, it still feels great to play. And throws some challenge at the player for sure. Like, when I think about the explosions and just the risk-reward built into the point blanking and just things like grazing and that kind of stuff, it's really fun. Now, the soundtrack in this game feels like it's more focused on, I'm not sure what to call it, like electronic or dance music a little more. Not necessarily this song in particular, but like plenty of the other stages kind of have that vibe. Whereas whereas Cosmo Dreamer felt as though it had a greater variety. Like, you had some dance style upbeat soundtracks, and then in some stages you would have really jazzy songs and things like that. So it's just neat to see the differences between the two games and what the developer and whoever else was involved kind of like zeroed in on for this one. I do like the combination of projectiles that we're dealing with, like the blue spreads, and then the worms that kind of come out, and then they're there for a second before they actually target you, and then they go flying at you. Now, we weren't on the menu for very long. There were plenty of things I didn't cover there, but there is like a casual mode before this mode, and there's a training mode. Actually, maybe trial mode is, I think, what I was talking about before, when you can just do the full run all in one shot, I think that's actually trial mode. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it was called in Cosmo Dreamer. And I'm pretty sure trial mode is already unlocked when you jump into the game. So I technically could have just been playing that instead of this story mode. But whatever, it's just all for fun and whatever, like initial play. That was just me not paying attention. I think... Okay, so oh yeah, I'm not sure if it's the followers or the likes that help boost the shield, or maybe both of them do. I just skimmed the manual very quickly, so please bear with me. Okay, and from here we are hitting up stage 7. This is a fun one because the boss is like essentially a tag team. We go up against the two of them simultaneously. And it's great paying closer attention to what's happening now that I'm not playing. because you pick out certain things when you're playing, but you just notice a lot more of the visual details and things like that when you're not focusing on dodging all these bullets. That was a risky situation. But yeah, the skateboarders just like ripping down the highway. These tanks are beastly. And I love how they just have like these big speakers and like the flying spotlights, and yeah, just fantastic stuff. Great drum and bass track. But I really do enjoy having games like this kind of pop up here and there, because they do serve as a really fantastic break, or like some form of refreshment, because these patterns, these are not typically what I encounter in the types of games I zero in on, and so it's a lot of fun kind of just weaving around and knowing that for the most part you can get away with a lot of maneuvers without super careful planning. So that's actually one thing I do need to add to what I said earlier about how like sometimes you're not sure whether you're going to make it through or not, and how that's not the greatest, but at the same time it's still fun because you can get away with more. And of course, if I was going to put more and more time into the game, I would probably start noticing stuff that maybe kind of just builds more of an awareness or an intuition for how to start building that that knowledge of whether I'm going to get through or not. But the game does feel very slippery. Like, just watching my movements, I'm remembering just how wild it feels if you're not careful. But to be fair, I think for the most part, this game is more or less about, minimal movement. I just happen to be flailing all over the place for the fun of it. So here we go. So yeah, a lot is thrown your way right from the get-go with like those 4 speakers. They don't take long to get rid of course, but there's just that much more that's coming at you if you don't deal with them systematically or fast enough. I love those big clusters that zero in on our location. It's a brilliant looking game, that is for sure. And I always love stuff like this where things come out at a certain speed and then they come to almost a standstill, or they slow down to some degree before spreading out again. It's something that I always love seeing in games, just the types of projectile behavior that we see. And having that, like, superpower charge or whatever it's called definitely lays the damage on thick. That is for sure. That was a silly hit. But yeah, there we have it. So a handful of stages and a bit of the ins and outs. But yeah, let me know if you're aiming to pick this up, or if you have already, or if you played Cosmo Dreamer and you, yeah, really like the look of this one, or whatever you want to share in the comments. That would be fantastic. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate everybody stopping by and supporting the channel. Yeah, have an awesome day. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.